part of this process is not just about cleaning up the old mess and paying off past debt. It's about breaking your reliance on debt. And the only way you can break that reliance is to get ahead of these things that are causing you to go into debt.
How you make it, how you wanna make it, how you make it, how you
You are not alone.
No, you are not. Friends, welcome back to another episode. And this is going to be a good one. This is just going to be a good old-fashioned debt pay down episode. Ben, it's been a long time since we've done one of these.
Yeah, I think we kind of go we kind of have trends in our content. We haven't talked about debt in a while, and it's kind of like a big deal,
It's a huge deal in the personal finance community.
So we should probably talk about it. So, and I really love talking about this because I really think we at YNAB, we have like a unique way of talking about debt. One that's maybe a little more forgiving. I think we did an episode a while back where I don't remember the title, but it was basically like how to pay off debt without making yourself go crazy, But we also talk more. I feel like it's more holistic. It's more about kind of breaking your reliance on debt so you don't need it first, and then you get into how to actually get rid of the debt you have, right? So we'll talk about that, but I love talking about it because I really think it's powerful.
The way I describe it in workshops is humane and sustainable.
Ooh, I like that. Humane. Yeah.
I don't know where I got that from, but as soon as I heard it, I was like, yes, the YNAB way of paying off debt is humane. And I really appreciate that.
Treat yourself like a human person,
Yes.
Yeah, it's good. All right. Well, we should just get right into it.
Let's get right into it. There's 4 steps.
4 steps
to this plan. So step number 1, list your debts.
List your debts. This seems like the simplest thing, but I think it's actually the hardest.
It can be
for a lot of people, especially if you're scared of your debt. I mean, you gotta acknowledge it, and it can be really rough, or it can feel really rough. But I think a lot of times when you start doing it, it's like, well, one of two things happens. People are like, "Oh, it's actually not as bad as I thought," and that's kind of nice, or it is pretty bad, and you're like, "Oh gosh, this is actually pretty bad." But I think it's always better to know the truth, and once you do acknowledge it, you can kind of you still feel better a lot of the time because you actually have boundaries to the fear. You know what I mean?
Makes sense.
Yeah, like if it's like you're running from this like amorphous monster, and it's scary. And like I've used this analogy before. I think it's really good. Like you're running from this monster of your debt, your financial situation, and it could be anything. Like you don't even know what it looks like because you can't look at it, right? Because you're running in front of you, and then you got to turn around and face it, and you might find that it's just a little fluffy Pomeranian. Right? And you're like, what was I so scared of? Or you might turn around and face it and realize, no, it actually is a scary monster. But you might look down at yourself and you got like a sword and a shield, and you're a knight, and you can slay that monster, right? Like you're powerful. You're maybe the monster's scared of you, because you just turned around, right? But if you don't take that first step of turning around and facing it and saying, okay, what does this monster look like? You'll never know. It'll always be scary, right?
Yes.
So that's the first thing. So what does it look like to actually list your debts?
Who do you owe the money to?
Mm-hmm. That's good.
What's the total balance you owe?
Mm-hmm.
What's the monthly minimum that you're required to make? And what's the interest rate on that loan?
Yeah. And I'd write down like the debt type. Like, is this a medical bill? Is this a credit card debt? Like that's part of like who you owe. Because I think all that information will help you make decisions on what to tackle first later on. So yeah. So, and then I think tally it all up. Would you do that? I think you should like maybe get a big number. Or maybe
that's what I did. I liked doing that. No, I think it's part of that addressing reality.
I think you have to
fully look at that monster in the face.
I mean, you're not going to write down.
I stand.
you're not going to write down a bunch of numbers and not add them up. I mean, come on, like, yeah, fully added up. Yeah, all that information, the interest rate, the amount, the minimum payment, type of debt, is going to help you make decisions. And I would argue maybe even add like how you pay it. Like some debts you might not have paid on for a while, depending on the type of debt. If you can find out, hey, what's like a link to go to the page where I need to pay it and write that down, that might be helpful too.
That's a good idea.
Yeah, just get yourself organized, in a lot of ways. So that's good.
And you can record this information wherever makes the most sense for you. Put it in a notebook, an Excel spreadsheet. You can even record all that information in YNAB if you want, though you don't have to.
Yeah. Just write it down in some way, and you can acknowledge it. Sometimes if you have a little more life experience and you have a financial past where things get messy and complicated, it could actually be hard to find your old debts. Now, if you're paying on your debt regularly, you know about it, right? But sometimes there's debts that might be in collections, that haven't been, or it might just be like a debt to like an old doctor bill, and they it's just sitting there, and they haven't acted on it in a really long time, and you're not even sure where those debts are. There's a couple things you can do to find old debts. The quickest, the easiest way, I think, is to pull up your credit report if you're in the U.S. And there's very similar there's similar things in other countries, but you can get your credit report for free from 3 credit bureaus in the U.S. You can go to annualcreditreport.com. Now, there's a lot of services out there that will try to get you to pay to get your credit report, but by law in the US, you are allowed to pull your credit report once a year for each of the 3 credit bureaus. So don't pay for it. Okay, you can get it for free. I do this myself 3 times a year. I pull my credit report for my wife and me just to see if there's any fraud happening, right?
I do the same thing. I set an annual reminder for every April. Make sure it gets done.
Yeah. So I think if you're trying to find debts, just pull all 3 from annualcreditreport.com, and you can get it for free. And you can just see anything that is not in that even things that you haven't paid on in a long time will show up there if your creditor reported to the credit agencies. Now, it's not going to catch everything because sometimes things don't get reported, but it's going to help you a lot if you need to find some things. Other things you can do, look at pull out that box of old mail. Do you have a box of old mail? No, you have a filing system. You scan stuff.
I have a digital filing system. I don't keep mail.
I am bad about that. One day I'm going to I'm going to get organized on my the papers. I'm bad about it. Anyways, so if you're like me and you're not like Ernie, pull out that box of old mail or go through your digital files, find, anything that might be a debt that might be sleeping, right? You can contact those creditors directly. I would be careful about that because you don't want to if there's like an old debt that hasn't been collected on for a while, you don't want to kind of activate it by telling them that, hey, I have a debt, because then they might start collecting, especially if it's like this lazy creditor, like a debt collector, that's bought the debt 3 times or something like that, So I'd be careful about that. But if it's like a doctor's office or something, or it's like a legitimate institution, you could call them and be like, hey, do I owe you money? And they'll let you know if you do, right? And also I wrote here, don't worry about it. They'll call you. if you owe money to somebody, they'll let you know. You might already be getting calls from people if it's an old debt that you haven't paid on in a long time. So those are some ways to find some debts that maybe might be harder to find. But most of the time, for most people, you're just going to be able to go through your list of things, go through your account statements, go online to your bank account and just look at those minimum payments that you're paying and list it all out, and figure it out that way.
So I'm curious, Ben, when you had debt, what did this look like for you? Did you keep track of all that information in YNAB or a spreadsheet, both?
Yeah. Well, it was all student loans for me. So I didn't actually have any debt coming out of school. My wife did, though, and she graduated, and we got married right after she graduated. And there's that 6 months period where we didn't have to pay, and then we were like 3 months in, and my wife Caitlin, she was just like super anxious to look at the number, because that's what's so crazy about student loans too, is like you just getting student loans throughout the time at school, and you don't necessarily keep track of it. You don't know how much you owe. And I was like, okay, I'm going to be a fancy new husband. I'm going to take care of this, which felt good. And I went through, figured out how to find out, because it was a little less streamlined back then, and looked it up, and it was more the Pomeranian. Actually, it wasn't that bad. Like, it was a chunk of change, but it was like, it was manageable, and we thought it was a lot better than we thought,
Yep.
And as far as how we kept track, we just kept track. We were using YNAB at the time. Or no, actually, that's not true. We weren't using YNAB, because that was before we started YNAB. I think we were using Mint by that point, or maybe like just before. I don't remember. It's funny. I don't remember. But and then later when we had the mortgage that I paid off, that was all tracked through YNAB. We used the loan planner and all that. So that's how we handled it.
Yeah, I started with a spreadsheet, but at this point in time, with the mortgage and the vehicle loan, I track that all in YNAB.
Mm-hmm.
I just like having all my financial information in YNAB. So, and especially with those loan accounts, and we'll get to the loan planner, which is a really cool tool in the loan accounts. We'll get to that later, but I like being able to have that tool available so I can play around with payoff stuff.
Yeah, it's really cool. So by the way, guys, if you aren't using YNAB already, you can get a 34-day free trial. Go to ynab.com/nerds. That'll let us know that we sent you. It just says, hey, this show is sending people. Like, just do it. Okay. Use /nerds, and sign up, give it a try. You can get organized in this way. And it's free for a month. So even if you don't want to pay for it, or you're not sure if you want to pay for it, just give it a try. We don't ask for a credit card or anything if you sign up through the site. So you can just get yourself organized using that tool, and I think it'll really help you.
So that's step one. It is the easiest, but it can also be the hardest.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's so simple, but not emotionally simple sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's move on to step number 2.
Okay.
This is all about taking care of those necessities first.
Yeah.
So before you even think about getting aggressive with the debt, you want to set money aside for the monthly bills, which includes the minimums on all your debt, and then your monthly expenses like the groceries, the gas, things like that.
Yeah. It almost seems like it goes without saying, but it needs to be said, because I have heard so many stories of people getting bullied by collectors and not paying for the light bill. Like, it happens. It's because they can be so insistent. You deserve to live and be a person and function before you pay back creditors. Okay. They can wait. It's okay. Yes, you owe the money, but you owe it to yourself to eat and have a home and have electricity at first. Okay. I just want to say that.
Yes. And if you're not being bullied by collectors, the temptation still might be to set aside money first for the debts. In your mind, you're like, I got to pay this off as fast as possible. I want to set aside X amount for my debts.
Right.
Hold off on that.
Yeah. Yeah. It shouldn't be like the first top line. The first top line is the 4 walls, your clothing, your utilities, your food, and your rent. Right.
Yep.
So take care of that. Should we just move on to the next one?
Yeah. I don't think there's anything else we need to say about that.
This is kind of the controversial part.
Yeah. This is where it gets really good.
Our method. But I think it's huge. So the personal finance space says, most of the time, says, you got to be super aggressive after your debt. Everything goes there. Only take care of your regular bills and stuff, and then go everything after the debt, right? We are saying, hey, hang on, chill out for a second. Don't do that, okay? Save for large and less frequent spending as a higher priority than paying off debt. Save for the non-monthly expenses, like car repairs, like yearly subscriptions, like Christmas, things that are going to happen but tend to sneak up on you because they're not as urgent. They don't happen every single month, right? Why do we do that? Like, why do we say take care of, like, why should I save for a car repair that might not happen for 6 months when I have a debt to pay right now, right?
Yeah, I know.
Why?
It sounds crazy. And I remember thinking, this is crazy. And like, I might not have said those words, but my body felt it.
Yeah.
I wanted to get rid of the debt so fast. I wanted to be as aggressive as possible. But those non-monthlies will happen.
Yeah.
That's the truth. We don't know. Sometimes we know when, but for a lot of them, we don't. Sometimes we don't know how much either they're going to cost. So we want to prepare for those things because preparing for them now reduces our dependence on debt later.
Exactly. Yeah, because you're not going to do yourself any good if you pay a bunch of money on debt and then end up having to use your credit card to pay for a car repair when it comes along 6 months from now. It's this constant yo-yo thing where you're like paying off debt and then going right back in. It's actually really frustrating. And if you think about it, if you just like do the math straight up, barring like some really nerdy math details about interest, you're going to end up in the same place. Like you're going to end up paying the same amount of debt in the end, right? But if you have this steady progress of I'm putting some money on the debt every single month and I'm steadily pulling it down, instead of this, I'm putting a lot of money on the debt every single month and then going and paying it off and feeling good and then getting hit with this bill and going back into debt. This is all about motivation. And if you have this yo-yo swing all the time, it's so demotivating. It's just drudgery. It stinks. And you're going to quit if you keep that up. Right. So
it's so tough though, because you don't feel the math. I think most people don't feel the math. You're like, okay, this makes sense, but what feels really good is making this big payment towards my debt. But then what we don't think about is the feeling 6 months later when we need that $1,200 car repair and we're like, crud, I don't have any money. And now this feels horrible because I'm going $1,200 more back into debt.
Exactly. Yeah. So it's part of this process is not just about cleaning up the old mess and paying off past debt. It's about breaking your reliance on debt as a whole. Like, I don't want you to have to use debt at all unless you make the conscious decision to, right? I don't want you to be forced to use it. And the only way you can break that reliance is to get ahead of these things that are causing you to go into debt. And that's why saving for larger, less frequent things is so important. Now, we're not saying that you have to have, like, I'm not saying you have to save like $1,500 in a car repair category before you put any extra money on the debt. I'm saying when you're making your cash flow decisions, you want to consider things like car repairs as a higher priority than putting extra on the debt. So you could do both at the same time, but if you can only do one or the other, focus on breaking your reliance on debt first, and then you can get to the rest.
Yeah, the point here is to develop that new habit of every single month putting a little bit aside for those non-monthlies.
Yeah.
And like you were saying, don't get caught up in that amount. It could be setting $10 aside for car repairs. I'm going to do that every single month. I'm going to build that habit. And then naturally over time, that amount increases.
Yeah. It feels counterintuitive, but I promise you, this is the missing piece. If you've tried paying off debt before and you failed and you had to quit, or you just got really frustrated because you're constantly yo-yoing, it's because you didn't break your reliance on debt. We cannot... It's kind of like trying to bail out a boat that's sinking and you haven't fixed the leak, right? And so like you're spinning your wheels because you're just constantly bailing water out, and there's more water coming in faster than you can even bail it out, right? And you got to fix the leak. You got to get in there and you got to fix the leak, and then you can actually get the water out, right? And so yeah, break the reliance first by saving for those non-monthlies, getting into that habit of doing that and that discipline of doing that. And then all the money that you actually put toward the debts and pay off the old debts, it's going to stay gone. I mean, it's going to be super motivating, because when you send $100 extra to that credit card bill, you know it's not going to come back later, right?
And let's go back to the feels a little bit, because we're all about the feels here around YNAB. That feeling when that non-monthly finally hits and you have money available to pay for it. I still remember that moment for me. It was a minor car repair. I think it was a muffler issue, an exhaust issue on our minivan. It was the first minivan we ever bought. It was really old. You know, I think it had it had over 200,000. It might have been creeping up to 300,000 miles. So it had issues. I knew we were going to have to pay for stuff. So I started setting money aside. And when we had to pay for that muffler repair, I think it was like a couple $100. It was the first time in my adult life that I could remember paying for a repair like that in cash.
Wow, yeah.
I didn't create new debt. I mean, I felt like such a boss on the ride home.
You were.
I'm like, I am winning this adult thing. It felt amazing. And it just reassured me that this is the way I'm going to always approach the non-monthlies. I'm going to take care of those before I take care of aggressive payments on my debt.
Yeah. I mean, how much better do the holidays feel, you know?
Oh my goodness.
Like when you're sitting there watching your kiddos open presents or something, you know, and you're like, oh man, but there's like this tinge of, I can't afford this. I'm not going to be able to pay for this. It's just going to be more debt, right? It just kind of sours the whole thing.
Oh, man.
No, if you've been saving all year for it, and you have the money for it, you can actually just enjoy it. This is going to let you be more present in life. It's going to let you feel like a boss, like Ernie said. I like that, right? And ultimately, it's going to break your reliance on debt, so it's not going to come back. And when you pay off debt, you're actually going to pay it off for good.
Yep.
And you won't be doing this constant yo-yo thing. So you're going to be more motivated, and you're actually going to stay out of debt when you actually get out of debt.
Yeah. And this is stuck with me all these years later, because when I first came to YNAB, I was very aggressive with the debt pay down. And then it took me a while to be like, oh, this isn't quite working. Let's start setting money aside for the non-monthlies. But now with this new vehicle loan that we have, I'm being super, super conservative with the debt pay down. Obviously, I'm making the monthly minimums, but I've got this little reserve of extra to pay down that vehicle, but I'm hanging on to it because we have some medical expenses coming up, or we're anticipating some medical expenses. And I'm like, boy, I really want to make sure that I have the cash on hand for those. So I'm holding back. As much as I want to pay extra and get rid of that vehicle loan as fast as possible, I'm holding back so that cash gives me options.
Yeah. Yeah. Maybe one way to think of it is, do you think it'd be accurate to say this? If you know that an expense is coming, whether it be a car repair or medical bill, like these things are going to happen, right? So if you know it's going to happen and you choose not to save for it, are you currently choosing to borrow money for it? Right?
You're currently risking borrowing money.
Yeah,
Definitely.
maybe that's why it's hard to get there, because it's like, it's this kind of like, it's less concrete. Like there's like a risk mitigation thing, and you're like, it's almost like, hey, I could gamble and like, maybe it'll end up being fine. Maybe my car won't break down before I pay off these debts. Right.
Yeah.
So it's like a risk mitigation thing. So I think it's kind of hard to acknowledge it, because it might not happen. Right. But the fact is that it is going to happen eventually.
Yes.
And then there's other things that do happen like clockwork every year or every 6 months or every 3 months, that we tend to still not acknowledge because it's not right there in front of us. For those things, I think, yeah, you're just making the decision to borrow money on that. And so I think what you need to acknowledge is that preventing future debt is just as good as paying off past debt. It's just as much making progress. So every time you set money aside in a category for Christmas or for auto maintenance or a medical bill, that is debt payoff money because it would have been debt otherwise, right? So yeah, acknowledge that. It's debt prevention just as good as paying off past debt.
Yeah, well said. Just very practically speaking here, I think it's important to get as comprehensive of a list as you can of what those non-monthlies are. Otherwise, you're going to be setting money aside for things and then having to use that money for something else.
Right.
So what we want to happen is when you set money aside for car repairs, there's a 95% chance that money actually gets used for those car repairs. It's not used for something else. So, for me, I remember my first year of YNAB, it took me a good 12 months to really dial in what my non-monthly expenses were. I thought I had an idea, but there were definitely some that I forgot about. And that's why I had like a stuff I forgot or like a miscellaneous category just to capture those in case it happened.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm going on, oh gosh, how long? 12 years of using YNAB or 13 years, something like that. And I'm still adding non-monthly categories, and maybe taking others away, So it's not something that you figure out once and you're done. It's something that changes throughout your life. But yeah, try to make it as comprehensive as you can. At least acknowledge it. At least list them, even if you don't fund all of them right away. At least list them. And yeah, so we're all about making lists here. List your debts, list your non-monthly expenses. Just make a bunch of lists. That's what we're talking about here. Okay, should we move on from this?
Yeah, we talked a long time about that one, but I'm glad we did because, like we've said, that is a unique part of the way we pay down debt with YNAB, and it's just it's huge. It's the biggest part.
Yeah, I think it really is.
Okay, so we've talked about listing debts, cover the necessities, start setting money aside for the non-monthlies. This next step is optional, but we highly recommend it. Make sure you're setting aside money for something fun.
Yeah, like actually enjoy your life a little bit. Yeah, for some people, especially if it's going to take a long time, like I don't want you to just be in drudgery forever, where you're like, oh, I'm never going out to eat or never going on a vacation or never enjoying just like the little things in life. Yeah, I think there is a place sometimes for like a short-term sprint where you're like, hey, we're going to go for 3 months and we're going to go hog wild and I'm not going to dine out at all. I'm going to cook at home. We even have challenges like that, like the More Money Challenge, where you go 1 month without dining out and only buying essentials. And I think it can be a really fun challenge for you, but set a time limit on it and then assess, see how it feels, right? But generally speaking, when you're on this debt journey, make sure you make some room for fun.
Yeah, this is another one of those controversial things. I think a lot of times in the personal finance community, you get the message of like no money or no fun until the debt's paid off. And back when we started this debt pay down journey, that's the approach that I wanted to take because I thought it was the way that you had to do things. And so, but then I started looking at reality, looking at our income, our expenses, our priorities, my wife Christy's priorities. I mean, I flew through the door one day after reading a debt pay down book thinking, or, shouting, hey, here's our plan. We're going to get rid of this debt like ASAP. We're going to show up on these news sites of like the couple that paid off, billions of dollars of debt in 2 days. But she wasn't as excited about that.
Right. Isn't that always how it happens? Like one couple comes in and is like, we're going to sell your car. And they're like, what? No.
So just looking at my reality, I was like, this isn't going to be our story. And so we have to approach it a different way. And we did. We We continued to eat out. We continued to go on vacations because, like you were saying, we decided to continue living our lives. And we ended up paying off the debt that we wanted to pay off. So, we got both. Sure, it took us a little bit longer, but we were okay with that.
Yeah. I think there's often a moral component to this that people like this shame and guilt component where people almost feel like they need to punish themselves for past mistakes. They're like, well, I screwed it up. I got myself into debt and now it's time to suffer because I deserve it. Right. And if that's your motivation, get that right out the window. Okay. That's a bunch of nonsense. I'm going to go ahead and tell you right now. Okay. This isn't a moral failing. This is a learning thing. Maybe you made some mistakes and you're like, I'm not going to do that again. Right. Or maybe often, I mean, I have talked to thousands of people, asked them how they got into debt. I have talked to tons and tons of people. So often it's like, I got sick or I broke my leg or my a loved one got sick. I mean, it's not your fault. Or I lost a job.
Yeah.
Like it's just not your fault. So don't beat yourself up and literally punish yourself for a moral failing, right? And even if it was just something that you did where you're like, that was dumb and I don't want to do that again. You're not that person anymore. You're a different person. So stop punishing the new person for the old person's mistakes. Just clean up the mess and do it in a way that's sustainable and that you can handle. And I just want you to know, you don't have to punish yourself. Okay. You can go at a pace that you're comfortable with, that you want to go at. And it's not a moralistic thing. Now, if your motivation is, I'm going to cut back on a lot of fun things because I just really excited about getting rid of this debt and it makes me happy and my partner's on board too, then that's great. That's great. But it's really more about your motivation.
Yeah. You get to decide how you're going to approach your debt.
Yeah.
I think that's huge. And that's different for me. Like sitting with that feels totally different now in my mid 40s where I'm like, it's okay to have debt.
Yeah.
Like for me, it's okay that I have a mortgage, that I have a vehicle loan.
Yeah. You're not a bad person if you do, right? And it doesn't have to be an emergency unless you want it to feel like one and you want to go after it, but don't do it for moralistic reasons. It's just not helpful. And ultimately I think it's going to fail because it's not a motivation that is going to see you through to the long term.
So yeah, make sure you set aside money for something fun and just to stress this even more, the amount you get to choose. It can be a lot. It can be $5 for donuts. So
yeah,
that doesn't matter. And I think this would also be a good time to plug the More Money Challenge.
Yeah.
Because which is a community that we have here at YNAB where for, 30 days, 1 month?
Mm-hmm, 1 month.
You go on this adventure to save as much money as you can, or to save $1,000, I think.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because there are those sprints that we want to take where, we want to set aside the fun, get aggressive with our debt, and the More Money Challenge is a great way to do that.
Yeah. The $1,000 thing was, we did surveys of people that did this challenge, and that's what they were able to save, which is wild. You might be able to save less or maybe even more, but yeah, I think just going for a sprint and seeing how it feels is a good idea. But again, it's a limited time, and there's also there are worksheets that you can do if you sign up. We can email you all sorts of resources so you can kind of work through these thoughts and these feelings as you go. So I think it'd be really powerful. If you want to do that, I think it's YNAB.com/more money challenge. Check it out. Okay.
There we go. And I'll put that link in the description.
There you go. Okay. Let's get into some of the more nitty-gritty details now. The next step after you've done, so let's review. You have listed your debts, you've funded your necessities, you've saved for larger, less frequent expenses as a higher priority than even paying extra on a debt. You've set aside money for fun. Now it's time to pick a focus debt. Pick one debt that you're going to pay extra on and then pay minimums on all the rest. And there's a few different methods for figuring out what that focus debt should be.
Yeah, finally, in the final step, we're able to start thinking about our debt, at least begin to seriously think about our debt. So the methods, we have the snowball, avalanche, and anger method. Snowball method, that's the one we most often talk about around here at YNAB, is you line up your total debt balances smallest to largest, and you focus on paying off the smallest balance first. That's the one you get aggressive with while you pay the minimums on all your others.
Exactly.
And then once that smallest balance debt is paid off, you move on to the next smallest balance.
Exactly. And the reason why you go with the smallest balance first is to get that early win, to increase your cash flow sooner and be able to kind of, it's like that snowball rolling down the hill. It picks up more snow so that your power, the amount of cash flow you can devote to debt builds and builds as you go. And if you get that early win early on, especially if you have like some little ankle biter debts that are annoying you, you can really get that motivation rolling, right? Because I think sometimes if you have a debt that's just real big and you're going after that first, it can be kind of a slog, right? So starting with the smallest balance first is really the way to go for most people. Because again, this is about motivation. What's going to motivate you the most, right?
Yep. And I'm the emotion person. Like I feel stuff, and so for me, I wanted those quick wins, and I used the snowball method. But maybe that's not you. Maybe you're more analytical.
Are you
You're
a
into the
nerdy
numbers.
math person?
Do you have spreadsheets for everything?
You want to go with the avalanche method. So this is listing your debts by the highest interest rate first, and then down to the lowest interest rate. And this is going to save you the most money in the long run, because you're knocking out debt with a high interest rate first. So you're paying less interest overall, because earlier, time, the time value of money kind of a situation, right? The quicker you can get rid of the high interest debt first, the less interest you'll pay. It's pretty simple.
And then the final method is the anger method.
Yeah,
this is you focus on paying off the debt that just drives you insane. The loan from your parents or the friend, and just thinking about it makes you mad. You can focus on paying off that one first.
The example I always go to, and this is straight from the community, somebody said that they are paying the car loan for the car that their ex-boyfriend drives. And like, I don't know how that happened. Like, a whole bunch of shenanigans must have happened. That they don't even have the car, and they have the debt, but they don't own the car. And their ex-boyfriend, who they're not too happy with, is driving the car. That just makes you mad. So just get that out of your life, right? And I would include, this is a lot of relational stuff, like you said, like debt to your parents. Like you might have the sweetest parents, or maybe like your in-laws. They might be the best. They might not ever mention the debt. It may not affect your relationship at all, but for you, it just feels gross and you want to get it out, right? Or maybe you owe money to a powerful institution like the IRS or something, and I mean they're very reasonable if you work with them and as long as you're talking with them, right? But you're like, I just want to, maybe get that out of my life because, they can do some stuff, So, just, or you owe money to the mob and they might break your kneecaps, I don't know, get that out of your life, right? There sometimes, this is why we said write down the type of debt along with the interest rate and the minimum payment, because there are some things that maybe you just want to get rid of. I can think of so many examples. I mean, maybe it's a painful time in your life. Like maybe it's debt from a divorce, or maybe it's debt from cancer treatment. And it's just every time you make that minimum payment, it's just a reminder of that painful time in your life. Just go after that debt first, even if it's not the lowest interest, or the highest interest rate, or the lowest balance. Go after that debt first. Just get out of your life so you can move on. Anger method. Go for that. And I think a lot of people might kind of do an approximation of all these things.
Yes. The bottom line, just pick a method. It doesn't matter. Honestly, we probably waste most of our time in the personal finance community debating these things,
Yeah.
figuring out the math, like just pick one and get started today.
Yeah. The only thing that I would be opinionated about here is be sure you're focusing on one debt. Some people are like, should I spread out my extra debt payment money across all the debts? Don't do that. That's not going to help with the interest. That's not going to help with the motivation. Go after one debt, pay minimums on all the rest, and really focus on it, hammer on it, get it out of your life. And so you move on to the next one.
Yeah. So the idea, once you have that focused debt, after you funded your necessities, you're saving for the non-monthlies, you put aside something for fun, whatever's left over can now go towards that focused debt. And you just do that month after month after month, and then you move on to the next one.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of power too, and just picking an amount and going with it. Say, okay, the credit card is going to get $200 extra a month, and that's what's going to happen. And I'm just going to go with it, because I think sometimes when you're in this debt pay down mode, there can be this urge to constantly second guess every single spending decision. Every single time you spend money. If you've given every dollar a job and you decided, okay, I'm going to spend $200 on dining out, I don't want you to then go whenever you're at Chipotle, be like, oh, but maybe I shouldn't spend this $15 because it could go to debt, right? Just, like make the decision and go with it, at least for that month, okay? And then you can make a different, but like get all your scrutinizing down into like one meeting or one session of scrutinizing, and don't like scrutinize every single time you spend money, because then you're just, it just gets to be exhausting, right?
Well, that's the power of the YNAB method. You separate those spending decisions from the spending moment. So before you spend your money, you decide, here's what this money's going to do for me. And then once you make that decision, you're like, all right, now I get to spend this. There's clarity, there's confidence, there's no second guessing. Just spend it. Yeah.
And usually when we talk about that, it's to avoid spending mindlessly. But I think sometimes people can spend maybe a little too mindfully. Am I allowed to say that? Where you're like, especially if you have a really big goal you're going after, like once you make the decision how much you want to spend on something, just do it. Okay. Don't like constantly every time you swipe the card, be like, should I be doing this? No, you made the plan, follow the plan, and then make a new plan next month. That's good.
Yep. And along those lines, something to keep in mind too, the amount that you are putting towards your focused debt might change month to month. No 2 months are ever the same. And I always stress this because, and I remember feeling this as well, is like, okay, I have to put the same amount. Like every single month, I want to put $375 towards my student loan. And if I can't put $375, then I failed.
Yeah.
But there's going to be months where as you go through those priorities, maybe your necessities need a little extra.
Right.
Maybe it's the non-monthlies that, take a little bit more. Because then there's going to be other months where you have windfalls.
Right.
So it all balances out in the end.
It does. And I think the more stable your finances get as you follow the whole YNAB method of giving every dollar a job, the more consistent you're going to be able to be. But it's good to acknowledge, like, it doesn't have to be the same every single month. Make a different plan and stick with it. Okay. Once you've paid off a debt, the common advice is to just automatically go put all that extra cash flow that you've now freed up toward the next debt. And I think that's good advice. But we have a little sneaky, catchy phrase called the payoff pause. Okay. So let's say you've paid off a debt where the minimum payment was $200. Okay. That's a big deal. That's $200 of cash flow, monthly cash flow that you now have available to you to spend however you want. Now, you could put all that on the next debt and just keep that snowball rolling, but I don't want you to automatically do that. Instead, whenever you pay off a debt, think about, okay, is there something I want to do with it? Do I want to have some fun with it? Do I want to shore up some of those non-monthly expenses, prevent future debt a little bit more, a little bit better? Do I want to start trying to get a month ahead on my finances? These are all options of things that you can do. And the whole point of paying off debt is to get those options, to get the control back over your cash flow. So I don't want you to necessarily automatically throw all the money at the debt. Pause for a second.
Pause. And also consider your monthly expenses. My guess is most people, when they start paying off debt aggressively, they probably really cut back on food.
Yeah.
They've cut back on restaurants. They cut back
They're
on
wasting
groceries.
away. They're like, they're skin and bones. They're starving themselves to death.
And that's fine and might be necessary.
Well, that's not fine, but there's a there's a limit here, right?
But yeah, maybe you want to put an extra $100 in your groceries category every single month.
Yeah.
You want do it.
Yeah, just do it.
Okay, one final thing that we want to talk about is a tool unique to YNAB. It's the loan planner.
Yeah.
So when you add your loan accounts, and we're talking non-credit card loans, so mortgages, student loans, auto loans, things like that. When you add those loans to YNAB as a loan account, you have this loan planner tool that as soon as you bring it up, it's going to show you how much interest you have remaining on that loan, how much time there's left. But the best part is you get to experiment with, you can start pulling some levers to see how you can pay that off faster. I love this tool.
Yeah, you can say, okay, what if I put a bunch of extra money on it this month, and the graph will change, and it'll show you, okay, if you do that, you're going to save this much in interest, and you're going to pay it off 3 months sooner. Or if you say, okay, what if I put this much extra on this debt every month? It'll do the same thing. And sometimes just a little bit of amount of money makes a big difference, especially on those larger debts or debts with high interest rates. You'll be really surprised if you set aside $100 extra a month. I mean, like mortgages, because it's the most dramatic one, right? So sometimes it's like, hey, if you set aside $100 on your mortgage, you'll pay it off like 3 years sooner. And it's like, what? Like that's crazy, you know? Sometimes it can be pretty dramatic, but it's really fun because you can just kind of play with the numbers, not committing to anything. And then you can literally copy that number and set a target in YNAB, and it's all happening in the context of your plan. So you can actually experiment and be like, I like this, let's go for it, and then make the plan right there in YNAB. So it's pretty fun. There's a lot of cool animations and graphs, and it's nerdy. It's great.
Yeah, you can run scenarios based on the payoff date. You know, if you're set to pay off something in, April 2029, you can say, all right, what would it look like to pay this off a year early? So April 2028. And then YNAB will tell you exactly how much extra you have to, send every single month.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's not just the amounts. You can set the dates, and YNAB will spit it out the other way. So it's just a calculator, and you can do fun stuff with it. So
did you mention the windfall already?
Yeah, where you can set aside like how much. If I put a large amount on it, like one time, what would happen? Yeah, that's another thing you can do. So it's pretty fun.
So yeah, absolutely check that out. And you don't have to add your loan accounts. I've said this a couple times, so I just want to stress it again. If that seems like too much, but if you like having that information and you want to try out the loan planner, be sure to add those accounts to YNAB.
Yeah, maybe just use it for your focus debt and play with it for that, and then leave the rest just as regular categories. That's fine too.
All right, let's get into the YNAB wins, and then we'll call it a show.
Let's do it. All right, I have a YNAB win from Marissa, who wrote in an email. Marissa said, I've been using YNAB for about 1.5 years now, and when I first started YNAB, I was looking for ways to assign my money to different goals my husband and I had set for our family. Fast forward 6 months, and my husband decided he wanted a divorce and abruptly moved out. Oh, great. Okay. That's not fun. This is one of those anger method situations. I was left with a large amount of debt, half the incoming living in an apartment I could no longer afford with my 2 toddlers. Without YNAB, I don't know how I would have survived this time. Thankfully, with a few months under my belt, I made a fresh start, recreating my own budget. That's what they titled the budget. I love that. Using my own income. It helped me realize the best financial decision was to move in with my parents short term until I could pay off the debt, fund my divorce expenses, pay for childcare, and eventually save for a new home. This was 1 year ago, and YNAB has kept me on track with my finances to meet my new goals. I'm due to pay off all my debt in 2 years and save for a down payment at the same time so I can move out on my own, possibly next year. YNAB has really been my guiding light of hope during a really tough financial time, and for me, that has been a huge win. Oh, Marissa, I'm so sorry.
Huge.
I'm so sorry you had to go through this. Like, yeah, divorce sucks. It's just crappy time. It's not fun, and you're acknowledging that, but I'm glad that I like that guiding light of hope. Yeah, because you can see it. You can make a plan and you can see the light at the end of the tunnel. And that's what you need in a time like that. It's really great.
And excited about all those new goals that you have, this new life you're creating. Love it.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's yours, this is great. Okay. I have one from Gene. I'm going to say Gene because that's in the username. Wrote in on the Mega Wins #2 episode, which we need to do another one of those soon.
I think so.
Very short. Love all the wins. Mine are I've paid off all credit card debt and I'm a month ahead. Love it. Short and simple and really exciting. Love that.
My first win comes from Rain. Rain emailed us. I've been using YNAB since 2021, and it really changed my financial life for the better. I made my own Google Sheets back in the day, which was really forecasting and expense tracking. YNAB really put me in control of my money, and once I hit a month ahead, magic. I eventually kept working at it and got 2 months ahead, chef's kiss. The past 9 to 10 years, I've been working towards saving up to travel the world for an extended period of time without having a job and, firstly, paying off all my debts. I ended up paying off over $60,000 in student loans and other things like medical expenses and credit card debt. I will be starting this trip in July. I will be using YNAB to budget my monthly expenses as I travel to ensure I can fund my whole trip that will be close to a year.
Man, that's so great. Like you're just living your best life, right, Rain? I mean, that's just so special.
Well done. And this one's a fun one. This is from Alex. And this was an email.
Okay.
Just checking back in as I had my biggest YNAB win this weekend. A couple of years ago, I had roughly 18,000 pounds in debt. And I commented on an early video from the Budget Nerds to say that once I paid off all my debt, I'd propose to my girlfriend.
I remember this. Okay.
I'm going to try to track down that original comment.
Yeah, we can see if we can find it.
And we know where this is going. Well, the debt was cleared a couple months ago after 2 years of serious saving and pay down. And on Friday night, she said yes. YNAB has changed my life inestimably. How do you say that?
Inestimably. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
It's changed your life. And I can't thank you all enough for the work that you do. And because I'm sure you guys care, the ring was fully funded in a category called If You Like It Then.
Perfect. Just perfection, Alex. I love it. Thank you for following up.
Congratulations.
Wow. People just following their dreams, man. That's what this is. And they're making it happen. So yeah, I love it. Thank you so much for sharing. If you want to share a YNAB win, you can email us at budgetnerds@ynab.com or just leave a comment. And we do read all of them. And we love responding to a bunch of them as well. So be sure to do that.
All right, friends. We'll see you in 2 weeks. And until then, happy YNABing.
Happy YNABing.